Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful talk with Baumann Brunke. And we are going to be talking today about embracing the shadow and integrating our divergent selves. And this is actually the third time I'm speaking with you, officially speaking with you, Don, because you were a speaker in Rebecoming the One last year. You talked about your book having to do with snakes.
Mhm.
And then I interviewed you a few months ago about the book you recently put out on shadow animals. And
Right.
so I think what we're going to be talking about today probably is going to weave together all of it and more.
Okay, good.
That's my guess. I mean,
We'll
it's
see.
very, very similar themes, right?
Right,
Um,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it because, first of all, your books are amazing. The conversations I have with you have been amazing. I resonate with you as a human on so many levels, and I'm really
Well,
happy.
thanks. Same here. Same here. I love talking with you, Martha. So thank you
Yeah,
for joining me. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so before we begin, I will just read your bio so everyone who's new to you has a sense of who you are. So Don Baumann Brunke is an author, animal communicator, and dream enthusiast. She has written 9 books about connecting with animals, nature, self, and spirit, and created an animal-themed tarot deck. Her books include Shadow Animals, Animal Voices, Dreaming with Polar Bears, The Animal Wisdom Tarot, and Awakening the Ancient Power of Snake. Welcome.
Someone's been busy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And not only are they not only are there many of them, but your writing is just so high quality, beautiful, personable. It's really like, and you weave in history, it's so rich. Every page is filled with something that I can relate to on a personal level, and then that expands my consciousness and teaches me all at the same time. So it's your books truly are a treat. And anyway, yes, I just want to give a blanket
Oh,
endorsement of all that.
thank you. Thanks so much. That's lovely to hear.
Yeah. So as you know, I asked you to be a part of the symposium again this year, and this is the topic that arose for you, embracing
Mhm.
the shadow and integrating our divergent selves. And
Yeah.
so the purpose of the symposium is to hold space for the healing of our relationships to gender and sexuality. So do you want to start by just saying whatever comes up for you about why this topic?
Well, yeah, I think it's an incredibly timely topic. For me, I've been working with the shadow for quite a while. And especially I wrote my book Shadow Animals during the pandemic, which felt to me like the best time in the world, to kind of go in and look at all these levels of fear and the way that fear was projected in so many ways, and that so many people were caught by it, and how difficult it was to kind of find our center, our anchor of who we really are when you're being told, you could die, and all of this stuff. And not to say some people didn't, but I'm just saying the fear was rampant, right? And I think that speaks to shadow and what shadow is. It's everything that we don't want to see about ourselves, that we fear, that we feel shameful about, guilty about. It's all those emotions we kind of don't want to deal with. So we push them down, we mask them, right? We push them down there. We don't want to deal with them. And yet, as the pandemic shows us, all of this is coming up, and it's coming up not just individually, but collectively. So it's a huge thing right now. And I think, you look at the many healing symposiums that are being put out right now, and it's all about healing that shadow, whether we call it ancestral trauma or we call it, gender and sexuality. It's all that same stuff of the stuff that we need to kind of pull up from our subconscious and sit with and look at and acknowledge so that we can begin to integrate it. And, as I say in my book, this isn't really for beginners, right? It can be difficult work, and yet everybody can do it. Everybody can sit with what they're uncomfortable with. What's the teeniest thing you're uncomfortable with? Spiders. I don't like spiders. Okay, so you begin where you begin. Whatever it is that triggers you, that causes you to project outward. We don't want to see our stuff, so we project it out there onto animals, situations, other people, the government. Wow, that's a great one, isn't it, for collective projection? So yeah, all of that I think is coming up, it's burbling up. It's, we're in this liminal space where we're kind of leaving the old paradigm of the, some toxic aspects of the patriarchy. Not to say the patriarchy in itself is toxic, but there's toxic aspects, just like there's toxic aspects of the matriarchy. We're kind of leaving that and we're moving into a new world. What does that new world look like? I don't know. We're in the mystery. We're in the liminal space right now of that mystery of the shadow. And it can be very unsettling for people. So the reason I wrote my book was that to help people see that what are you afraid of, and how can you bring that back to center? How can you reclaim that? I'll just say one more quick thing about the shadow, which is, it is all of those things that we're afraid of. So on the one hand, it's this big baddie, it's like what we don't want to see, what makes us feel bad, what causes us to get small and protect ourselves and, project outward, right? But the other side of it is that it holds our gifts. It holds energetics that perhaps were once too powerful for us to take on. I'm great. I'm creative. I'm loved. I'm worthy of love. All of these things that we, for whatever reason, pushed away from ourselves and pushed down into us. So those are the gifts of the shadow, that when it comes up, when we sit through that uncomfortable period of looking at what's shameful, what we feel guilty about, what we don't love about ourselves, and that deep breath comes up and we're able to reclaim that, and we become lighter, we become more energetic, we become more joyful. So that's the good part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about specifically the healing around gender and sexuality, of course, that's only one like holographic component of
Mhm.
all of the healing that we're trying to do.
Right.
But for example, I'm thinking of various things we could consider shadow sides of that healing process. So let's say, for example, for me, as someone who identifies as a woman, some of the things I would like to push away in my world are things like various kinds of threats I feel from men, like
Mhm.
being talked down to, or even being physically threatened, or being treated as less than, or whatever it is. And I certainly, I can think of many examples I've heard from people who identify as other genders, like not wanting to be controlled, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So what are some, I'm wondering two things. One is, let's say for me, if I have, and this is true about me, if I have a trigger around, let's say, I really do not like being around people, but in particular men, who I feel are speaking down to me or speaking over me. Those
Mhm.
those two things really
Mhm.
get to me. Okay, and I'm talking just, this is a really simple level. There's deeper things too, but um so number one, I'm wondering, in that case, what would you say would be the danger of not addressing that shadow? And number two, what are some examples of ways you feel like we can then work with the shadow?
Yeah. Okay. Good. Really good question. So, Carl Jung said, the great danger isn't in meeting our shadow, it's in refusing to meet it or ignoring it. Right. So I think it is, I mean, kudos to you for even just bringing that up to a consciousness, because a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people are like, the problem is that person over there, that, he's the bad guy, he's the one, da 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 da, right? So if we can bring that up to consciousness and realize, okay, so that's my trigger, people who talk over me or put me down in some way. And what do we do with that? Well, it's not going to work to try to reform that person. I'll just tell you, years of experience, right? Years of trying. It's not going to work. So what do? We bring it back in. What part of me likes to talk over people? What part of me feels I know better, so I can just kind of shut them down? What part of me, it's an inside job working with shadow. It really is. I mean, we can use the reflection, the projection that's out there, but it's always about bringing it back and sitting with that energy and kind of looking at that. And it requires, some depth. So whatever you do, if you're a meditator or if you do inner journeying, whatever you do, if you walk in nature, whatever it is, it's to get yourself in that calm space and then ask that very honest question, what part of me is that? And like me, I'm a dreamer. So I a lot of times get dreams of my shadow selves. They'll come up. In fact, I just had a recent dream. This is just a little diversion, but it was so funny because this shadow self, a man, is a couple steps above me and he's looking at me and he's holding a gun at me. And I'm holding a flashlight at him. And when I woke up, I had to laugh because I'm like, how do you kill a shadow? You have a flashlight, right?
That's amazing. Your dreams are amazing.
I love dreams. And I love that visual of, he's telling me a certain terms. I'm your shadow self, right? So how do we do with that? Again, it's going into it, meeting that self. And in the dream I did, we talked and we found we had a lot in common. It was really amazing. And so that's what it is. That's the beginning. And it's different for everybody. My shadow is going to be different than other people's shadow, than your shadow. So it's whatever triggers us, whatever we project on, whatever makes us feel uncomfortable out there in the world, whatever we get angry about. Anger is a good one. Or incredibly sad about, what is it out there that speaks to that part of us? And then how can we go in and be soft with that a little bit, meet it, have some tea and scones or bagel and lox, whatever you like. I like both. So go in there and begin a conversation. Does that make sense? You kind of, it's an art, huh? It's an art and it's a dance and it's a way of meeting those selves. And I think really hearing their stories, really listening, not telling them, how it should be or what we think or who are you, it's letting go of that and really listening, and going from there. It's going to be a dance. It's going to be a movement, and however you bring that more and more consciously into your world, the more you open up to that. And pretty soon your shadow self is your ally, your friend, your mentor, perhaps, your guide. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I have a personal story that maybe would help flesh this out a little bit because I'm having realizations as you're talking. So maybe it would be a helpful metaphor, but real story at the same time. So my dad died, as I think in December of this past year, so just a few months ago, and and he died in Thailand. See, that's where he was living for many years. And long story, but essentially, a lot of his family has lived in India for the last over 100 years. So one of my family members went to Thailand, got my dad's ashes, and took them to India to be buried just a couple weeks ago. And that family member he's a cousin of my dad's. Okay, so he's kind of the male patriarch, I would say. Now he's the oldest male person in my dad's family now. So is this male figure who I'm really close to going to Thailand, getting my dad's ashes and bringing them to the family cemetery in India and burying them. Okay. My dad had a lot of shadow side, a lot. I mean, a lot of good side too, and a lot of things that were very difficult, not only for me, but just for the family in general. And so this act of my dad's cousin taking the ashes and having them buried with the family, to me is, I mean, it was incredibly powerful and incredibly healing for me personally on many levels, but it also feels like him actively retrieving the shadow and bringing it home, you know. And what he did was, when he buried the ashes, he had his daughter was taking, my cousin was taking a video, so I saw the whole video of this, and my dad's cousin went down the row of gravestones in the family graveyard and spoke out loud to my dad, literally welcoming him back to the family, you know, member by member. But he named each family member, each of the ancestors buried there, saying to my dad, welcome home. You're now here with, so your uncle, your other uncle, your aunt, your dad, your blah, blah, blah. And by the end, he said, we love you. Welcome home. Right? I mean, it's like gonna make me cry again. But so as that whole experience has been happening, both before that and during that, and now since that, I've in myself been having a very profound transformation, I guess you could say, with regard to my whole karmic relationship to the masculine, because this is my dad. So he's a big figure for me with regard to the masculine. And so of course that's shifting my personal relationships with other men in my life too. And as I've been integrating all of it, I've played around with this idea that when there's a certain kind of dynamic going on between me and another human that I don't necessarily like or want, I've been playing around with the idea, okay, so what if I, instead of thinking of this dynamic as something outside of me, what if I think of this as something in a dynamic that I chose for whatever reason to participate in within myself, all of it being part of me, right? So this is very similar to what you're saying, but the component that you have added in for me here, the way I'm interpreting what you're saying is, yes, I mean, yes, welcome, like name the shadow, welcome it home, recognize that it is all a part of you. But the thing I haven't done, which I love what you're saying, is then also talk with it, listen to it, dialogue with it, in a sense, re-become it. I don't know if I want to go that extreme, but
or maybe reclaim it.
Reclaim it.
Yeah.
And really hear it, like really, yeah. Anyway, so any reflections or any thoughts? And
well, no, I love that story. I love that your uncle did that, and that's so beautiful, isn't it? That would be a good one for more people to incorporate, you know, because I can imagine that was healing, not just for the living, but also for the dead, you know. That's a really beautiful thing. And I think what you're saying, and then also bringing it home to you, also bringing it home to the living, you know, and sitting with that, you know, your dad probably gave you a lot of riches with all his shadows, so that's all there to reclaim what's his, what's part of me, what's still active in me, you know, what can I learn here? I think that's the question. What can I learn here, rather than how can I get rid of this? Because we're kind of, our society is kind of like, let's get rid of it. Let's take a pill and right. Want to get rid of it, cut it out. But no, it's about seeing it, sitting with it, accepting it, or seeing the larger story of it, right? And then kind of reclaiming that, and you'll feel it energetically, you know. You won't have those projections anymore. I mean, that's one of the big values of shadow work, is that we lose our triggers. We start to not be triggered by certain things, and you know, that frees up so much energy for us, right? We no longer have that constant, you know, irritation with this, that, and the other. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do any other examples come to mind for you of, I mean, I can think of one in the country you and I live in, for example, at the moment, but is there anything that comes to mind for you as
A
another,
feeling of shadow or of what?
yeah, a way that we could flesh this out, this topic of, um,
Of reclaiming our shadow, of
yeah,
working with shadow.
yeah.
Like I said, I do think it is inside job, but it's collective too. And I think just seminars such as yours, and I do see more of them, more of them these days that are about, ancestral trauma and kind of working through that and looking at what holds us, looking at what, keeps us as a society or as a collective, as a world, held.
Mm,
And what are those difficult things and kind of and there's so many different modalities that are coming up right now, healing and sound healing and movement therapy. And, it's all of those things are about, lightening up and kind of letting that stuff move through us so that we can acknowledge it, see it in our conscious mind, and sometimes it's not even conscious. Sometimes we just have this spontaneous release of stuff, right? And that's okay too. So it's not like we have to always name it. I think
mm,
naming it is helpful because we're very mental oriented society, but so it is helpful. But sometimes I'm just acknowledging that it does come without words, and it's more like a poem or a song or a dance, right? So it doesn't necessarily have words, and that's okay too, of course. Yeah. All of that,
definitely.
all of the above. That's the answer to the question these days, I think. All of the
All of
above,
the above.
right? I mean, it's about letting go of that, Republican versus Democrat or them versus us. It's about letting kind of go of that mentality and embracing it's planet of diversity. It's embracing diversity, really, is what it's about. Yeah.
So that relates to the question that was arising for me. So as our world is, I would say, attempting to, at least from a certain perspective, I would say a lot of our world is trying very hard to heal.
Mhm.
And one take on that process is that the idea that as we're attempting to heal, the shadow side will potentially rear its head even stronger, right?
Yeah.
Which probably we are witnessing happening. So
Well, and I think, I'm sorry, let me just say, I think it
yeah.
rears its head when we get stubborn and refuse to acknowledge it. If
Mm,
we're paying attention and we're going like, okay, that feels shadowy. That feels, I mean, it's my daily practice now. Who bothers me at the grocery store or when I'm doing things? And then I'm like, ooh, good. What is that? What is that? How can how can I sit with that? How can I do that? Right. So then it's a much more gentle ride. It's a lot. I'm not saying it's all fun and roses, but it's a more gentle ride than the dragon coming up and rocking your boat and
right.
right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So so I would say there are many things in the world that people are currently legitimately very upset about.
Mhm.
Truly, right? So, and I don't want to deny that those things are not, I don't want to deny that those things are truly upsetting.
Mhm.
Um, and what what from this perspective, what would be a way you would recommend meeting that or being with that?
Well, okay, so maybe it would help to have a little example here. What would be your example? What's in the
Well,
world that's up?
again, for me, and one example is the college that I happened to go to was for my undergraduate was New College in Florida,
Mhm.
which is currently a major target of DeSantis
Mhm.
in Florida. So the college I went to was extremely liberal, highly intelligent kids who were also or are extremely politically liberal in general.
Mhm.
And DeSantis, and they had the school has a really alternative way of doing education. So there's no grades. It's very student focused. It's incredibly high caliber academically, but tries to give a lot of freedom for innovative thought and discourse in various ways. Okay, so that doesn't really fit with DeSantis's worldview.
Right.
So he's trying to essentially stamp out that way of doing
Yeah.
education. Yeah.
Well, okay,
Okay.
let's just elevate it a little bit from a specific individual, because I do think this is happening in the world. You're
Yeah.
exactly right, that we
Mhm.
have this, this stronghold of the old hierarchical, above and beyond, above and below. That's why we call it the toxic patriarchy, right? It's this insistence on separation, on this insistence that everybody be the same, that you follow these rules. Da 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 da. It's control. What's at the core of it? We're fearful. We're fearful that we're going to lose control. So here were these crazy college students doing whatever they want. Da da da. Right? So that's their projection. Yeah. And I think that you're right. That's going on all over the place right now. That's what I said before. We're in this liminal phase of, the old stuff. It's going to put its claws in. It's because it doesn't want to change because it's fearful, right? Okay. So how can we deal with that? Can we have compassion for that? Change is hard. Change is hard for all of this. I always, when I have a problem like that, I always go, we're all in this together. So what part of that is me that is kicking and screaming about changing? What part is me? How do I contribute to that? Again, it's not to feel bad. It's to ask what part of my subconscious or my personality or my consciousness even, wants to divide, wants to make him the bad guy. And, and I'm obviously on the right side, right? We're obviously on the right side, right? so as soon as you feel that, that's what, in my mind, the little red flag goes up like, shadow. Okay, what's there? How do we sit with that? Again, to me, it would be about finding that space inside that doesn't want to change, that is fearful of change, having compassion for these people who are going through, because they must be really based in fear, to have such anger and such, anger covers fear, right? So a lot of times you can just look at the fear. Where's the fear? And then you can have a little bit more compassion for the stuff that we're going through. And there's going to be, earthquakes, literal as well as metaphorical, all over, because we are going through changes and the earth is going through changes. So yeah, it's a wild ride. Are you gonna do it in the wild, scary way, or again by finding our anchor, by finding our center, by allowing ourselves to work with shadow? I think we do have a more gentle ride, and then we can help others who are having a more difficult time too. So that's where the healing comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple months ago, I think, I was particularly upset by this Florida situation, and on a personal level, right? And then I channeled something about it, and what came through was so interesting, and I'm curious what you think of this. So what the spirit world said was, what's happening on the earth is just like a baby who is trying to fall asleep, like trying to fall asleep in the sense of trying to come back to home, like come back to a sense of feeling safe and held and like I'm home. So they were saying it's inevitable. The return to source is inevitable. It's happening. It already is. And so all the chaos happening on Earth, in a sense, is like, what they said is, imagine the Earth being held by a sack, like a sling, right? And the Earth is like a baby. And so imagine you are holding a baby in a sling and you're bouncing the baby to sleep. And sometimes, I mean, I'm a mom, so I know this. Sometimes some babies, their way of falling asleep is actually they need to cry harder as they're falling asleep, right? Some babies just fall straight to sleep, but some don't, and that's actually part of their nervous system. It's just needing to have that extra sort of vocalization or whatever as they then are falling to sleep and feeling comforted and all of that. So the spirit world was essentially saying, yeah, hold the whole earth like a baby and just imagine that all of these beings, whether or not you quote unquote agree with them or not, they're in their own process
Yeah.
of coming back to source.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so true. We're all in our own process, and some people we're just at different places, right? And that speaks to the earth as a baby, as you know, yeah, we're going through this liminal, what is birth other than a liminal phase, where something is being brought into being, into greater being, and a baby is, it's still kind of unformed and we don't know. And yeah, I think there is something about comforting, being a good go-to for some of this work. I mean, there's times we need to kind of, be a little outraged and get our fire up and get it going, and there's other times to, come home and kind of soothe. And again, it's a dance, right? It's a dance.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going through. So be lively on your feet. Find your own rhythm. That's the other thing too, and we can find the rhythm not only of ourselves, but of how our rhythm works with the earth's rhythm, or the rhythm of the animals, the rhythm of the seasons, the rhythm of what we're going through, on very microcosmic as well as macrocosmic levels. So I think that's a good metaphor. I like that, feeling that rhythm, because it's not of like you do this, this, and this, right? That's the old mentality, right? The 5 steps, whatever that is, I never resonated with that. I always feel like it's fluid. We start where we are, we work with what we have, and we, move through that. And it's going to be a little different for everybody. Yeah, we can give 5 steps, and if they're fluid, then that's very helpful, because everybody is different. And again, it speaks to tuning in with where we are. Yeah. And let's also say, and knowing that there's other people, other beings that are very similar to us and that are going through the same things. That's that kind of find your tribe mentality, right? That can be very helpful at times, to kind of be with people who are in the open space that you are, or although I guess the shadow side of that is, being in the closed space that you are. That's how angry mobs get formed, right? So there's that too. I don't know. It's a dance.
Yeah. And balance. All of it needs balance.
Yeah.
So the last question coming up for me is, so you obviously do a lot of work with animals.
Mhm.
And one of the things that has changed in me since you and I first spoke a year ago, I feel ridiculous even saying this because it's so obvious, but it's true, which is reading your books and having the conversations I've had with you has made me realize that humans are animals. I mean, I knew this, obviously I know this.
No, I know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that we really actually are. And there's been a process for me this whole past year and I would say it's still in process, of reintegrating the reality that I am a body that is an animal. That's part of my relationship to being a body who is also earth.
Mhm.
I happen to be earth as an animal. And the animal that I am happens to be called a human.
Mhm.
Right. So that's to me, it feels like a very important reality to fully get for lots and lots and lots of reasons. So I wanted to name that, but also with regard to your relationship to ourselves as animals and to all animals and maybe just life, is there anything that comes up for you that you particularly want to share, that you feel like this reality that we are animals and are connected to the whole animal world can help with the shadow work? I mean, of course, you've written books on it, literally the whole books, but anything in particular?
Well, I think that notion that we're somehow apart from animals, goes back thousands and thousands of years. And there was a concerted effort. And again, that's that kind of hierarchical, toxic aspect of patriarchy to, put us above, right? And, Adam has to name the animals, right? Give them names. Why don't we listen to what their names are, So there's this, I'm just speaking metaphorically and kind of a little funny about that, but as if we own our animals, our livestock, our dogs, rather than being with them in, kind of a more, a relationship, right? A larger relationship. And so I think that that is a shock for people, to go, yeah, we're animals. Yeah, yeah. In my book, In Shadow Animals, I loved it. I mean, I just do little jokes to myself, but the chapter 13 was the most dangerous of animal of all, right? So it is human. It
Yeah.
is how, and I think we are dangerous because unlike most animals, we can say one thing and mean another. We have all these little secret agendas that go on, and that's why we're in this world of misinformation and disinformation. How do you know what's even real, right? I mean, that just kind of exploded in and of itself. And how do we know that? But the good thing about that is, yeah, we have to learn how to use our own discernment. That's what's key right now,
Mm.
and if you do that, you can easily tell what's misinformation, what's disinformation, what resonates as truth, and what is just somebody spinning an agenda, right? Yeah. So clearing all that out of I mean, I stopped listening to the news a while ago, and whoosh, there's just such a level of clarity. I mean, I still get news from different sources, but it's not with all of that dramatic agenda attached to it and all that. And now when I listen to it, sometimes it's a little bit funny just to see how manipulated it is, and that how a lot of people still buy into that and they believe that's the reality. So
Yeah, and it's really, really sad and really hard because another passion of mine related to all of this healing is that I do feel like we're in a chronic collective sort of state of PTSD, or at least acute
yeah,
trauma, not
yeah,
PTSD.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and part of helping us to find solutions that our world needs, to me, means really focusing on helping us, our nervous systems, to relax and come back again to the rhythms of ourselves as earth, and even our animal bodies, right?
yeah,
Like that the
yeah,
rhythm
yeah.
much
You know,
slower.
eat
Yeah.
when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. I used to get really whacked out when I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I'd be like, I got all this to do tomorrow. No, 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 let's take a pill, right? And now it's just like, oh, 3 a.m. I guess I could go right or walk around and look at the moon or, all these other things. And then I always told myself, you're going to sleep really well tonight. I mean, there's always we find these things, right? And one other thing I want to bring it around to is just what you're doing, that we have, yes, we have all this crazy disinformation and crazy stuff, but we have so many more summits like this, seminars, people who are coming forward and helping others to clear with that. I'm so touched by the generosity of people who do this. There's no charge for so much of this. It's just like, here it is. And to me, that generosity is that's a good sign. That's, I think, what we're moving. We're going to move into this more generous world. It's already here. We're in a more generous world where, let me help you. And here it is. And did you heard about this? And, it's all there. We're all at the big potluck dinner of cosmic consciousness.
And at the same time, not just Pollyanna life. We need to address the
No,
shadow at the same
no,
time.
no, right.
Both and.
There's work to do, and some of it's hard, and that's why it's good to have all these people and know that these modalities are here and that can help us in ways. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Great. Is there anything
Yeah,
else that feels like you're feeling called to say?
I think that was a lot. We did a lot there, Yeah. Thank you. I just want to thank you for doing this, for putting this on, because really, truly, it's and so many other people who do the same things, who do weekly podcasts or YouTube videos and just share that sharing is just so important, so valuable. So
Mm.
yeah.
Well, thank you. As I've said several times, I think, your work absolutely has changed my life over the past
Oh,
year and so many levels, and
oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. Yeah.
who you are as a human is wonderful. And
You
yeah,
too, Martha. We should all
my
have
nervous system
all
feels
best of it.
regulated when I'm with you. So
Oh.
that's great. What would you like to share about what you do in the world, and anything you're wanting to invite people in, or how people can connect with you, all of that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. Well, I do. I'm an animal communicator, so I do that part time. I talk with people about, problems they're having with their animals, or just a lot of people come to me now. They want to understand their animals better, and they want to understand, work on that relationship in deeper ways. So I love doing that. I love problem solving, things like that, connecting with animals and humans. We're always doing kind of a three-way conversation, sometimes more, sometimes, other presences come in. So I love doing that. I do tarot readings, which is a similar type thing, where you're connecting with that person's higher self and bringing in information that might be difficult for them to see or hear, or not that it's scary. It's just sometimes it's hard to see ourselves. Doesn't have to be, but love doing that. I love doing dream work. I don't really do that as a profession. I just love dream work, and so I'm constantly working with my dreams and writing books. I mean, that's my jam, huh? I love reading books. That's my meditation. So yeah, so people can find me at my website, animalvoices.net, and I have a monthly newsletter. Some months I skip because stuff's happening, but it's mostly monthly, and yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah, there we go.
Thank you again so
Yes, thank you, Martha. You're just wonderful.
much. And more again soon, I am sure.